Hello friends, so today's video is going to be a discussion about standalones, specifically some books that are currently standalones and whether or not it would be beneficial or if we want there to be sequels. And then the other group of books we're going to be talking about are books that it seemed as if they were going to be standalones and then it was announced that they were getting sequels. And the general question for all of these is going to be, should they be standalones? So I did something similar in the past where I talked about book series where a lot of people read the entirety of the series and then decided I kind of would have liked if it had just ended after book one, and going through the various different reasons why some people felt like certain series should be condensed or they would have been better off alone. And so the thing that kind of sparked this take on this conversation was that recently, as many of you know, the book Babel came out, and I was under the impression by the end of the book that we were getting hints that there would be a sequel. And for that reason, I said that I thought it was the first in a series, and then I was seeing other people saying it was a standalone, and currently it seems like it is. And so that's the first book that I wanted to touch on. Some of what R.F. Kuang does, I think, would create a very interesting foundation for following books. I think there are interesting characters that are introduced that I would like to get to know a little bit better, because in the first book, you are primarily just focusing on the character Robin. But some of the side characters I actually found myself really fascinated by. I was really gripped by them, and I just thought it would be really cool to see what would happen next. So I'm of the mindset that I actually think Babel would be a great first book in a series for a number of reasons, but the characters, as I just said, is probably the biggest reason I'd be interested to see what happens next. The impact of everything that happens in the first book, I want to see how it contributes to future installments. I think it could be really cool to see how R.F. Kuang takes what she's created with the magic in this world and then expand on that, see the consequences of certain actions, expand on that. There's also the added element of I genuinely would have no idea what was going to happen next. There's certain books that by the end of the first book, you're like, all right, I kind of know where we're going with this. I've seen this before. I don't know if I need more of this. But with this one, I really genuinely thought, wow, okay. So what's going to happen in book two? And then it would seem currently it's only book one. So I'm actually really curious for those of you who have read Babel already. Are you of the mindset that you thought there was going to be a sequel, you would like a sequel? The next book I wanted to mention would be Descendant of the Crane. This is a story that the way it leaves off absolutely makes it seem like there was the possibility for sequels. And I actually would have loved sequels to this book. I found I was really captivated by it. It is essentially a fantasy murder mystery. So the very beginning of the story, our main character's father has died. He was the ruler of this area. She believes that somebody poisoned him, but everybody else seems to think that he took his own life. And what's sad is that everybody else is kind of like, you need to move on, and also you're the one that needs to rule now. But she's so consumed with proving that he did not do this, that there was something else going on, that he has enemies. She's trying to determine who those enemies are. She feels like no one's listening to her. So she finds an unlikely ally to help her with this investigation. It kind of consumes her. And while it's consuming her, there are obviously things going on in the land, in the realm. There are people that need help and they need her to step up and rule, but she's very consumed by this mystery. So there was a lot about it that I really liked. There was some reveals in the story that I was finding to be quite devastating, and they hit pretty hard. And I was really excited for when we would eventually find out information about book two. And then it would seem currently it's only one book. I think this is one of those situations where the author, perhaps, I obviously don't want to speak on their behalf, but it feels like they had plans for a potential sequel and maybe the publisher did not sign for those future books. And something that sort of reinforces this idea is the fact that it would seem there were issues with the publisher with this book, which is really unfortunate. I think that this author is incredibly resilient to push through that and to keep going. It's hard enough to bare your soul, basically, and put your book out there for other people to have thoughts and opinions on. And then to have what it doesn't feel like you have your publisher behind you, that to have that also, and then to keep going with your career, I just think is incredible. I liked this book. I do wish that there was more. I hope in the future we get more with this one. So while I still own it, I'll probably buy the paperback copy because there is going to be a reprinting with a different cover and the new artwork is beautiful. The other artwork was beautiful as well, but the new art is fantastic. I like this book. I want to support this author. She has a new book coming out very soon at the time I'm recording this, and I'm excited for that one. I so hope we find out there's going to be additional books after this one. Slightly switching gears here, the next book would be Anatomy, a Love Story. So I thought that this was a standalone, and then it was announced that there's going to be a sequel. And I don't know how I feel because I kind of was happy with it just being one book. And I feel like the way it wrapped up, it felt like it was done. And so to find out there's going to be an additional book, I don't know how I feel. Because of things I was discussing with Descendant of the Crane, where you don't know sometimes if you're going to get signed to make those sequels. Sometimes authors are encouraged to have books feel like they're done, even though they maybe want to write more books. And with Anatomy, a Love Story, the ending felt like an ending. There's a last part that feels like, and then this was what happened after. And I was like, oh, okay, that's what happened after. And then apparently we're going to get that after now in a sequel. And you know what? I'm going to read it. But I also we'll find out, when I read the sequel, maybe I'll be like, I'm so glad there was a second one because I had some questions by the end of the first. And there were some things that I wanted to dive a little deeper into. So maybe I'll end up really, really loving it. As of right now, in my mind, it is a standalone. I know it's not, but it still seems like one in my mind. And I think it works as a standalone, but it could end up being a fantastic duology. Very similar to what I was describing with Anatomy, a Love Story, where I thought it was a standalone and it turns out there's going to be another one. The same thing with the book Little Thieves. Little Thieves is a retelling of Goose Girl, but we're actually looking at the villain of Goose Girl, and we're kind of seeing that story from their perspective. So this is a character who has stolen something from someone that allows her to take their place. And by pretending to be this other person, our character is able to get into high society, and she's actually stealing from the rich. She's not giving to the poor, she's giving to herself. She plans to take all this money and make a life for herself at some point. There's actually a lot of conversations about class and privilege and opportunity, and I found that the book, while it had these fairy tale elements to it that were really enjoyable, I thought the way that the themes were handled were really well done. It was a nice balance. There's also an individual who's trying to investigate who is behind all of the things being stolen, and so that character crosses paths with our main character. There's also a curse. And so I liked so many of the elements of this one. It ended in a place where I was like, that was a fun standalone story. And then it was announced there's going to be a sequel. And when I found out there was going to be a sequel, I actually didn't realize it was a sequel. I was just like, oh, cool. She's writing another. I thought she was just writing another fairy tale retelling. But it follows the same character. And so I have no idea what's going to happen. What I'm hoping for this sequel is that it feels like it's its own fairy tale, like it's its own episode or its own season. I am curious about this one, but I did like it just as a standalone. So I really hope I like the sequel as well. And then the last book I wanted to mention would be The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. This is a newer book from this year that follows a girl who allows herself to be sacrificed to a sea god. It's this thing that occurs quite often where women are sacrificed to the sea god in hopes that his anger will go away if the right person is sacrificed and he will have his bride. His anger does cause natural disasters that impact people living on land. Our main character was not supposed to be the person sacrificed. It was actually her brother's betrothed, the woman that he loves. And she did not want this woman to have to be sacrificed. She didn't want her brother to have to lose her, and so she went in her place. And then once she's there, she's realizing that perhaps there are some people pulling some strings. And so from there, you get this story that has a lot of really beautiful aspects to it involving family, involving ancestry, and that connection, even when there's distance, even when you're away from everybody, the significance of family and the love and the support and how important that is in a person's life. I really enjoyed this. It had such a beautiful fairy tale feel, and I thought that the setting itself was really well done. I thought it felt really good as a standalone, and it is a standalone. And I actually could have had it be a little bit longer. I wish it had been just a little bit longer because I was so loving all of the themes and the beautiful scenery that's being described. I wanted more of that. I wanted a little bit more of some of the side characters as well. I think it works really well as a standalone. I don't just think I wanted more within that standalone. I think what I want is not a sequel for this. I just think I want this author to write more stories like this. I would love to have this author do more takes, more of their fresh, original ways of bringing to life other stories, of having this lore, these myths, or these tales. I would like their style to then go and do more books like this. So I think that one works as a standalone very well. I just want more. Let me know your thoughts on the books that I've mentioned. If you've read them, let me know, do you like them as standalones? If you found out there's going to be a sequel, do you want them to stay standalones? Or are you excited about the sequels? And then what are some other books that fall into these categories as well that you have thoughts on? But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.